Welcome back to another episode of the Uncommon Advice Podcast. So Z and I are here to dive on in and talk about how to build $100 million marketing strategy.
Hey, that's pretty easy for you, huh?
Oh man, I mean, there's definitely ways. So yeah, I would say, some of the stuff we've done over the years, if you lump together the amount of years we've been in marketing and everything we've ever done, right? So let's get some guru math going on here. We've definitely probably hit that in $1 million in sales with all the different products and coaching and services over the years, but that's over time.
Hey, you got there though.
So it's over time, I would say, and just to be shoot you straight, because I prefer to do it that way, is that's not all of our stuff. That's because we've had an agent. We had an agent for a long time, did a bunch of client work. We had a lot of great clients that did some amazing things. So they made that job easy when we built the marketing strategy for them. But I'm excited to jump in and talk about some of the stuff that, the core key components of the ones that are required to do that. Not only stuff that I've learned along the way, but stuff that we learned from just watching other companies along the way that have done it as well. So What you got?
Yeah, but one thing going back to that, scared money doesn't make money. So to get to 100 million, you need to invest that money. But we're going to kick it off. We're going to kick it off on the importance of building a strong brand. Actually, this is funny. I wrote a newsletter back a couple months ago in regards to this. It's on my LinkedIn. In regards to building a strong brand and how important it is to build that strong brand when you're create that awareness, that trust to your consumers, your audience, with all that going on. I mean, is there any brand that you can think of that you yourself have looked into and said, man, I think I put a good input in creating this strong brand?
So, I mean, there's definitely brands out there that I've gone and worked on that I think are really cool, right? So, and ones that we got coming up. So, and brands that I thought they were going to be killer and ended up not being. One of the brands I had an opportunity to work on that does really well, that's pretty awesome, is Organifi, which is we had an opportunity to come in and help them with design and optimization and stuff like that, which is a really, really cool nutrition brand, right? So, Green's Company is what they've got. So that one was really cool. I like how they did it with theirs and the marketing they had. And what's kind of cool about what they did is they started with building an audience, right? So they had a really big audience, and that audience was able to allow them to kind of scale these products when they launched them out, which was really cool. So being behind the scenes on that. One that I've seen evolve over time from ground up, which is pretty cool, is the Deal Maker. So working on that brand and having input on that's been a pretty cool one to kind of watch come to fruition. Now, a lot of that happens and it's kind of growing from there too. So that's pretty awesome. And I'll give two that I thought would explode as soon as we launched them. I personally, we launched one called Military Fit, and I was like, this is a killer brand. This is what we're doing with everything else and product. And we never got it to take off. Like, we just couldn't get it to really grow. And another one that is a brand that we worked on a while back that I think we're going to bring back after all these learning lessons over all these years. We're going to try and attempt to bring it back as name recognition. Just the name of it is really good. And that's Naked Diet. So nakeddiet.com. So
that's a good one.
Yeah. So, I think there's, name, but at the end of the day, names are cool, but at the end of the day, it's problem solved. Right.
Correct. But then also the other thing that's also very important is a lot of people say, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? But you have to find the way. How are you different from the competitors? Which I feel like that's a lot of things that people miss. They try to, it's not bad to model it or look after another company, but if you copy the same thing, it's like, you're basically, there's no difference. Why should I go buy a pair of shoes from a company that's basically the same, and a company that did a really good job differentiating themselves from anybody was Nike.
Oh yeah.
I mean, with that Swish logo that came out, 1988 when it launched, and I mean, nowadays you see that logo anywhere and it's Nike. Like, you don't double think, oh, that's another company. No, it's Nike because they separated themselves from the competition. But when it did launch, Nate, you were around that time.
Yeah.
How when that
yes, I was around at that time.
How did when that Nike launched, Was there anything to it, like being young, just being a consumer to it? Did it catch your attention right away, or was it over time as Nike kept growing?
Well, first off, growing up, we didn't have a lot of money, so Nikes weren't even on the table for me to purchase. So, for me, it was my shoes were one pair a year for school and one pair of cleats for sports, right? That's what I got every year, and feet better not grow. Maybe that's why I got some, I got really big feet now. I don't know. Instead of stuff them in the same shoes all year. But I think, one of the Nike campaigns that really did stick out to me, though, when they were really getting into that and leveraging other brands and doing those different things was the Bo Jackson. I was a huge Bo Jackson fan back in the day. Best football. He would have been the best running back of all time if he never got hurt. But he's still, just amazing what he was doing back in the day, kind of athletically and whatnot. But with him, they came out with this whole cross trainer thing, right? It was like Bo knows, right? And then I had him with all these different sports. And that was the kind of an iconic commercial back then in regards to what they were doing with the sport. And I don't know if he came before Jordan or after. I think he came before Jordan in regards to kind of having that big shoe big, because then when Jordan came in, he just
that took off, especially in the basketball world,
the basketball world. But definitely Nike. Obviously, it's constant and it's recognizable, and they're constant. If you look at what they did with all these, then they leveraged other influencers, right?
Mm-hmm. So you put a great point there. Other influencers, look at now, they got for soccer, Cristiano Ronaldo, one of the what's considered one of the best players almost of all time. You got LeBron now taking over the basketball. Jordan, the Air Jordans are still out there with Nike, but now you got LeBron who's making the big impacts, or Williams. So you got all these people, and that's the next step in building brand is when you have the credibility. Right? Nike gained the credibility from these big athletes. Now our idols to a lot of the young generation and generations that are like me, that grew up watching LeBron with the big Miami Heat fan. Got us two rings, but that grew up, and now it's like we know who LeBron is. If it wasn't for
D Wade, I don't know if they get those.
Hey, D Wade did play a big factor, but I think we should have had
D Wade and UD. You don't have those two guys. I don't know Miami gets them.
Oh no, absolutely. But going back to it, they play a big role in the Nike because they're such idols to the younger generation and the people that keep growing. That it's like, I want LeBrons. Like I'm gonna put them on, and I was like that when I was young. Sid. Same thing with when Curry went into Under Armour. That was ridiculous. Like I remember everybody wanted the Currys.
Oh yeah.
When he went into Under Armour, and then nobody really was like, who was really wearing Under Armour that I could think of? I don't think there was much. But then Curry comes in, the Curry ones come out with Under Armour, and everybody's wearing those yellow Golden State Currys. Everybody's wearing them. You go to AAU tournaments, everybody's got. Even if you were a red and white team, they were still wearing those blue and gold Currys out there because it was an idol that people followed. And they had the credibility. Yep. They had the credibility and the name behind it.
Well, and on top of that, Curry also inspired a generation of like 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds when I was coaching basketball that felt the need to shoot 3-pointers
from half court.
So high percentage shots for those kids.
But it's what those idols do, and it's why it's so important to have the credibility. And not saying you need to go get these huge talents, right? You don't have to go get these LeBron James or the Currys, but what you need to do is when you build a brand is you first got to find what is your audience going to resonate with, right? The colors that's going to catch your audience, the feel, the logo, all that comes into your slogan. All that comes into work when you're building these brands. It's not, you don't need those people. Those people come in later. But Nike didn't start off, Michael Jordan and Nike wasn't on day one. That was after years of working and building their brand. They were able to bring in a name that big. Yeah. And I feel like that's what a lot of people misunderstand is like these companies started like everybody starts from the ground.
All of it. I mean, you got to start somewhere in the ground up for sure. And obviously opportunities arise and people take advantage of them. But to come back what you're saying, and we'll touch on it a little bit later, but what really Nike was doing was borrowing influence. Yeah. Right. If you look at what they do and these other brands do is they go out now and they borrow influence and they say, hey, look, if this person has a following, I'm willing to pay them to be able to be put in front of their following or sponsor them. And it's not just happening in a sports world anymore, right?
Everywhere.
It's everywhere. I mean, look at what the Kardashians have done,
it's the cookbooks. Look at Ramsey now. Gordon Ramsay, everybody wants him because he brings that, what you said, the influence. He brings that. It's a collaboration.
Yep.
It's a collaboration between an influencer and a company trying to get to each other's audiences to grow it. And of course, I mean, just behind all that, you can see the success that it has.
And if anything, it's now easier. So go back to, we're getting off topic, but in regards to the building your brand strategy, I guess that's, let's talk about one important piece. If there's a takeaway from what we were just talking about is it is way easier today than it was back in the day to be able to do collaborations and to borrow brand influence and borrow influence from other people and build these collabs than it's ever been. The key is don't try, and you can't just use anybody.
Correct.
Because the people have to have an audience that you're going after. So to step back when it comes to building a brand, a strong brand, it's like you really have to know who you are actually trying to attract as a customer. Who's going to identify with your brand? We talked about, how people really just want to find a brand they can identify with and to help their identity over time. And this is where that comes into play. If you don't know who that is and you're trying to be everything for everybody, you're never going to really ever create a super strong brand.
Yeah, you got to identify that target audience. You can't be selling football cleats to a tap dancer. There's no need for it. They don't need it. So you're not solving their problem.
Yeah, and we can use football cleats, but even in and at the same time too, different brands, there are different name brands for different products, right?
Correct.
So there are products specifically for women that are 45 to 55, live in this area. You know what I mean? So it can be broken down into a lot of different segments in regards to that. And so it's sports and football is kind of a big category, right?
Correct. Bigger,
but in smaller stuff, right? Yeah, me too. But in software companies too, right? You get into software companies. What are they solving? What are they doing? And who is their target, right? So you'll find that's different, right, along the way.
And I think you brought software. A lot of software companies did a good job in that when that pandemic hit. They like Zoom. Everybody was going home. Zoom thrived.
Yeah.
Zoom was going up because you had to keep working. You had to keep doing those meetings. So they went after everybody because everybody needed it. It was a need. It was a necessity. But one other thing that's very key point is being consistent with your brand, right? Not switching it up. Because as more you switch it up, is you're basically rebranding. Every time you try to change colors or every time you try to change the logo or do something, is being consistent and just staying on top of it. Have you ever seen a brand be successful not being consistent?
Well, I mean, I think brands and companies are going to evolve.
Correct.
Right? They're going to evolve with some colors and kind of tweaks to the logos. And I'll tell you what, I think individually, my stuff has changed over time, drastically, I would say. So as an individual, I think if your personal brand, you're going to find evolves and changes as you evolve and change, right? As a person and grow. But as for a company, I think it's super important. You want to build something that's identifiable, that when people see it, they recognize it and they become used to it. So constantly, making massive changes. I think the one recent one, a big change that was kind of funky, and I almost thought it was a whole new car brand. But when they changed their logo. When Kia changed their logo, I thought it was a completely different car brand the first time I saw it on the road. I'm like, whoa, what is that? So I don't know I never really dove in to see what the purpose of them doing that was and why that whole rebrand made it so completely different. But, I'm sure they put a lot of thought, energy, and money behind figuring that out. So
probably make it a cooler logo than just a KIA.
Yeah. So now
it's a Kia.
Yeah.
But also, the important part of a brand is the story you tell behind it.
Yes.
The story is very important because there's a lot of brands out there, when there's a compelling story that an audience can read and they resonate with it, man, that's something I went through, or that's something that I'm interested in. That's something that I want to get to. The compelling story, I've always been a big factor when I'm bringing a company, I know I'm going through Instagram, and one that they did for me was the True Classic, the t-shirts. I'm rolling and I see their ad, I click on it, and their story resonated with me because I buy these shirts and it's I'm not the most fit guy, but I still want them to be a little tight so they look good, but they have a story behind it. They have a story. Apparently the owner itself, he was in the same issue and so he came up with this shirt that apparently slims to your body. And I was like, oh, yeah, see, that's what I want. So the story resonated with me. Yeah. It's and I bought a pack of 12. They're pretty good. Highly recommend them.
And the commercials. The commercials are classic too.
Correct.
I mean, they're pretty funny. You got the It's usually like the real fit guy, he's got a shirt on, and then all of a sudden it's like the, you know, not so fit guy's got the, you know, the classic tee. I think that's the company that has that, right? And all of a sudden, you know, the hot girl walks in, and she grabs the guy with the
with the classic tee.
Yeah, so it's just funny.
But it tells a story. It could have happened to you. You could have been the guy that didn't have the classic tee.
Yeah, well, you definitely want to make sure you have a classic tee, right?
For the girl.
Yeah, it's funny. But yeah, I mean, the stories you tell are super important, right? Because stories sell, for one, right? So being a great storyteller is not as only as an individual, but as a brand is super important, because it's how people start being able to see themselves a part of the kind of group you're building, a part of the community you're building, a part of the stuff that you've got going on, right? So
absolutely, yeah. And I came from a company actually, Cook's Headers and Exhaust, and one thing that they were actually they had a really good story. Opened up, I think, 1962. Like they had this family garage, started everything, hand worked, everything American made, and it resonated with a lot of people. A lot of these car enthusiasts who have these American made cars, like the Fords, the Dodges, all that stuff. They're like, man, I want an American made product from someone who started this in their garage. And a lot of people, if you ask them, is like, oh, so why Cooks? I was like, just a story. It's like it's an amazing, it's a cool story behind it. So their story build their brand. That story that they build helped them build the brand that they have today. So it's really cool how far a story can take you in your business. But jumping into the next topic, which I think is this era, is digital marketing and the strategies behind digital marketing. There's so much ways you can strategize around it. How you can get so targeted to it. You can get so specific into a target audience in digital marketing. You're the guru on this one.
Whoa.
You're the one. You're the one that's done it. I mean, I know from you spend hundreds of millions of dollars in ads into digital marketing and being able to grow businesses and grow funnels. What are a little bit takes on you on digital marketing, and what are some things that people should be taking advantage of in digital marketing?
Yeah, I would. First off, let's step back. I wouldn't consider myself a guru. I would just consider myself a student of my craft, right? So constantly learning, constantly trying to get better, putting in the time. You become a master at something by constantly executing, learning, and doing, not talking, right? And so, but yeah, I would say I'm more of a student of my craft and trying to get good at it. Which reminds me of a story. I don't. So speaking of becoming a master at stuff. So my dad, a lesson he taught back in the day to my cousin was, we were out fishing and he was sitting there and he's like, all right, guys, you got to learn how to bait your own hook. And so, and if you can do it 10 times, you are officially a master baiter. And so my cousin's uncle, my cousin was staying with us, went camping with us, stayed with us for like a week. And then all of a sudden his dad comes to pick him up and he goes running to his dad. And he starts telling his dad now, hey dad, I've baited my hook 10 times. I'm now a master baiter. And his dad just looks at my dad. He's like, you SOB, like start messing with him.
That's hilarious.
But, yeah, I was older than my cousin, but I was like, it was, stuff's dads do, right? But anyways, being a master of your craft is super important. But yeah, digital marketing. So strategies to get back to the strategies.
Get away from the masturbator story. And
just bait your hook 10 times. But, to get back to the strategies that you could use. I think one thing that a lot of people fail to leverage, and depending at where you're at, if you're just starting out and let's say you're trying to build your personal brand, or it can be personal or business brand, but you're new to it. A lot of people are trying to spend a lot of time figuring out funnels and conversion and all this other stuff, right? But if you put out good content and you're leveraging the content and if you create the story for your brand, whether that be for you as an individual, whether that be you as a company, what you are able to do is put a little bit of juice behind it. And a lot of people fail to do this. So to take a step back, speak specifically about a personal brand. For us, one thing that we started doing is putting a little bit of juice behind our ads, because just because you create content, you create the story, you create the message, doesn't mean everyone's going to see it. So no matter where you put it, but what you can do is accelerate the amount of people that see that message by simply putting some ad dollars behind it. Now, I'm not talking, a lot of people when they think of ad dollars on the personal brand, they're thinking they have to spend a ton of money. You do not. You could spend $5-10 a day putting stuff to your brand to get that message out and reach the right people, and then start building a bigger and bigger audience as it goes on. Or you can throw a ton of fuel on a fire and spend a lot more money on that stuff to get in front of a lot more people. But you can start small, you can go big. And the same goes for a business, right? When you are getting your message out there, there's nothing wrong with creating and running some ads that are simply have some of your budget created towards just brand recognition. Even if it's retargeting, if for people that land on your site just so they see you, brand recognition, even if it's trying to get brand recognition to audience. So if you know who your audience is and someone else already has it and you want to go create some targeting around that and be able to bring them back into your brand, 100% do that. So I think on the digital marketing, on the simplicity side, is be able to put some dollars behind that message and that brand building on the front end. Depending on the size of your company determines how much you're going to spend. A company like CocaCola, a company like Miller Lite, like all these big companies, the reason they spend as much money as they do on Super Bowl ads and these different advertisings is because they're building brand advertising, right? And they're continuously telling that story along the way. You don't have to start there, but those companies are doing it because they are there and they've built up to that, right?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, going into Coca-Cola, that's a great example. Coca-Cola had several years ago they released the bottles with people's names on it. That was a great strategy. I still to this day know people that have that bottle in their rooms just with their name on it. They'd never drank it. They just bought the bottle so they could have their name on it, which is crazy. But going back to it, actually doing some research for this podcast, funny you mentioned that. Apparently, so back in January of this year, it says that only 10% of your following actually sees what you post, which is crazy, right? Because someone who you have 1,000 followers, only 10% to see that. It's 100 people. So maybe you can get 100 likes. So it's like, that's why that,
right? Because most people that see it aren't going to touch it.
Correct. So it's like, but I think they do that. These companies do that to force you, right? That they got to make their money. So the way they make their money is that ad spend. But it's like you said, a lot of these people think when they go into, I got to spend $100, $200, $300, $500. It's like, no, you don't. I mean, I think what do you, $5 a day?
It depends. Don't give away all our secrets. So it depends. I mean, it depends what platform we're doing it on. We've done different platforms with it, but some of our stuff, we only put $15-$20 behind it. Nothing major, like just to get more exposure and get it out there. We've spent more on stuff too, but we've noticed kind of somewhat of a diminishing return the more you spend on some of the new content, because eventually it just kind of it loses its
just talking. I've talked to a couple owners. A lot of these people think they know digital marketing, and you have a conversation. It's like SEO, SEO. It's like there's like way better tactics I would go after before I get into SEO. Better tactics are more cost effective, like email marketing. Email marketing, I think it's one of the biggest in ROIs and return on investment, because you don't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars, but the return can be huge. So I know email marketing is one of the big ones. The other one, you got SEM, pay-per-click, get in front of the people, searching those keywords. And something that I learned working from an agency is a lot of companies just focus on Google. But there's so much more out there. Like you got Yahoo, you have Bing, you have DuckDuckGo, you have all these different search engines now that you can go after, which you can look at. So it's like when I was in the agency, it could have changed by now, I haven't looked, but DuckDuckGo was a big for the conservative audience. So like when you were targeting if you wanted to target that audience, you went on DuckDuckGo and you had great results going after the conservative, because a lot of conservatives were getting into the DuckDuckGo. But a lot of people just think it's Google. It's Google, it's Google, it's Google. And I think there's a lot more that people don't know about. I think they just know Google because Google is Google, how big they are.
Yeah, they're kind of that 800-pound gorilla, right?
Correct.
And because of that, they've been around forever. Now Facebook's obviously huge. Now people are starting to kind of shift to TikTok. YouTube's getting bigger and bigger. So there's all kinds of platforms. And the key is, if you're going to do that, now every ad style and way that you're going to do stuff is going to be different on those platforms.
For sure.
Along the way. So you want to make sure that you leverage the proper kind of, if you're not big into video yet, and you don't have that done yet, then you don't have to go to YouTube and run that, and try and run some video ads over there. If you just want to keep it at search, you could do just straight Google. So there's a lot of different ways that people can leverage it. But I think the biggest thing, when you mentioned SEO, SEO is a long game. Don't overlook it, but most people are trying to get results faster. Right. And SEO just happens to be a long game, and you're playing against some killers, man. Some of the people that I know in the SEO game are just straight killers when it comes to doing that and controlling it and owning spaces when they choose they want to own a space. So you're kind of working against some of those people. Whereas I don't think becoming good at Google ads and becoming good at Facebook ads or all these other YouTube ads is nearly as difficult as being a killer at like those platforms is way easier than being a killer in the SEO, in my opinion.
Because in those platforms, how much of this you got? How much money?
Yeah, you just, how much can you spend and how much you're willing to pay to acquire a customer, right? Give me the data and let's go. So
exactly. But going back now, you say data. How important is data into digital marketing? Because people look at digital marketing and they think it's just you throw your dollar behind it, and then the only data they look at is how much sales we got.
Yeah, and so there's more to data, right?
Correct.
It's a lot of people will look at day one rev, day two, and they're like, oh man, I'm losing money. And then all of a sudden you come back and look at that campaign 90 days later and you're like, oh man, I made a bunch of money. So I think key is like giving marketing campaigns and strategies enough time. If you're trying to build that $100 million strategy, you really got to be able to look at the data to make decisions. You have to be able to have a long enough fuse to watch to see how things pan out over time. And being very short-term minded and very short result minded is something that a lot of people tend to be, and you don't want to be, because building bigger campaigns that can scale, you have to be able to look at checkpoint 1, 2, 3, 4. You have to be like, all right, day 1, where we at? Day 2, day 15, day 30, day 60, day 90, where we at after 360 days. So you look at these things over time, and then you're going to find that you had winners because you looked at that data, and you're going to find that you had, losers as well. But another thing that people don't look at when it comes to data is they don't go and look at, well, wait a minute, my lead cost is this on, they'll look at that front piece. Like, hey, my lead cost on this platform is 5X to what it is on this platform. So I'm paying $5 here for every dollar I spend here. But what you might find out is you're making $25 over here for every $5 you spend here, and you're losing 50 cents for every dollar you spend over here, right? So it's like you got to really look at that stuff, and the people that get really, really good at that are the ones that are able to grow these.
And what about the ones that let's say they have a marketing strategy, killer marketing strategy, but they're the ones that only focus on that revenue number. They don't look at any else of the other data. How much traffic did we pull in? How many clicks did we get? Those people, if you're getting a high traffic rate, if you're getting the people to your site, you're getting the people to whatever you want them to convert to, and they're getting driven there. But then when you get to there, they're not converting. That's not your marketing. Mm-hmm. That's whatever your sales page, your sales funnel, whatever your sales process comes into play, that I think is also a lot of people don't look at. They just look at that revenue number. Oh, I spent $5,000. I need to make $20,000. Okay. Well, if you spend $5,000, but your button on your form is broken, you're going to make $0. Yeah. So there's so much more to it than just those numbers. You got to look at everything. You got to make sure your marketing, and Nate said this actually in the past, is your marketing and sales have to work together. Like it just does. If it doesn't work together, you're never going to grow. You're going to plateau at some point.
Now, I give marketing an edge over sales. You talk to sales guys, he may say some opposite. He's probably lying to you because he's a sales guy. So marketing is by far at least 51%, 49%. Anyone tells you otherwise, they're a sales guy. But no, I'm just joking. But I think, 100%. Your marketing has to work really well with sales, because they go hand in hand. It's not about the chicken or the egg, right? When it comes to that, I used to believe it was all marketing, and then as I dove and grew bigger companies, did bigger things, I realized it's really both, man. You got to have them both, because one, if you don't have any sales processes, it doesn't matter how many leads you bring in the door, and if you got all the leads in the world, if you got no sales process, it's irrelevant, right?
So, what strategy did you put in place when you went into the gym world, where you helped a company grow from 4 gyms to, what was it, like over 100 gyms or something?
Yeah, so we worked with a bunch of gyms back in the day, and I think the one thing, they were 5 when we started working with them. Now, I didn't have the expertise in regards to building gyms. As a matter of fact, I flew out to hang out with a buddy to learn how to build a gym, because I've always had a passion for I've always had a desire of mine's always been to build a fitness facility at some point, right? So I went out there to, meet with him and figure out all the ins and outs of doing it, and then he was like, hey, why don't you just come in and run our, the marketing stuff inside and out. Why don't you just help us with our marketing? And so I jumped in and helped him with his marketing, which took that off his plate, allowed us to do what we're really, really good at, allowed him to do what he was really, really good at. And we were just pumping leads, and he grew out to over 100 locations and license deals, like all kinds of stuff. So it was pretty crazy. But, but with things that we did is he had a really good sales process and we had a really good marketing process, right? So we were able to bring leads in and test different things and run things faster and put them through the funnel. And he on the back end was testing the sales process and making sure it all worked. And that's, we had those two communicating on a weekly basis with each other to be able to know how things were operating and performing. So now,
if you got a gym and you want to go from 4 to 100, just give him a call.
Yeah.
He has the knowledge for it. But before we move on to the next topic, Nate, what would you say are the three digital marketing strategies that you would recommend a business owner to help him get to that $100 million marketing strategy?
So I've talked to companies in the past that have focused on the revenue side and they're making a killing. They get that front end out and they're making money on day one. And then I ask them, like, have you ever sent an email to that database? No, we post on Facebook though. So I would say the three things I would recommend is, one is dial in who you're looking to be, what's obviously the problem you're solving. But at this point you already know, right?
Yeah.
You already know what that is. So I would just really dial in who you're going to be marketing to, and you've got that figured out. And then I would really start trying to craft your story. Craft the story of the brand, craft the story of yourself. What is it that's going to get them to truly identify with you? I'm not just going to make it up, right? It's got to be, there's usually some side of story that you can bring out, and sometimes you got to be a little more creative with it. Maybe you got to go hire someone that's a better storyteller than you to help pull it out of you, right? And I think that's really important. And then I would stick to that over time. I would also get very recognizable on kind of what your monikers are, what your brand is, your design is going to look like. I'd get clear on all that so people get recognition, right? They start seeing you. And then and then it's acquiring customers. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to acquire customers. So figure out exactly what platform you're going to go do that on. And once you figure out what platform and process you're going to use to go acquire customers, go all in and make it happen. And then before you start focusing on a ton of different other platforms, a lot of times when people are starting from ground up trying to build that brand, they've had some success, they get things going. All of a sudden they're like, they're winning on one ad platform, but then all of a sudden they think they can just go to like 3 more ad platforms. Get the one cranking and start adding in these other ones as you grow and dialing it, because the way that you market on one is different than the way that you market on on another one, right? So I would just make sure that, stick to what you're really, really good at, stay focused, dial it in, and go. Do not try and go too wide too fast.
And create good content, because that's what we're getting into right now.
Yes, you got it. Yes.
Creating that good content for these ads that you're putting out there, because, I mean, again, you got to catch the consumer, the potential buyer's attention. If you're not catching their attention, I mean, your money is a waste. And I actually want to throw an example. Someone that did a good job of creating content and collaboration was Dwayne Johnson and Under Armour. Yes. That I think has probably been Under Armour's probably biggest success. Just a little backstory on it. So this actually was, doing research on it, 2016 was when apparently that deal came along with them, that Dwayne Johnson signed for $25 million, which I think he probably beats his head now, knowing that's probably, he could probably do a little more than that. But just that collaboration that they did and the content that is being created, which goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is using them two together. But the content that Dwayne Johnson creates, promoting the Under Armour brand to his audience, you see him in the gym working out. It's his shirt, it's his shorts. I've seen you actually wear a couple of his stuff. Is some of the things that helped Under Armour grow that brand was that content, right? When you got a 6'5" man, bald man with the muscles the size of probably me over here, just going at it with that shirt, you're like, oh man, that's awesome. But content is very important, and we're doing a lot of it now with you. We're building a lot of content to get your personal brand going. I mean, you're doing your lives, you're doing this. We're hopefully going to bring in someone to do even more on it. Who really taught you or got you to, hey, you got to get more content? Or was that just something from just seeing people do it, you're like, I got to do this?
I've always seen people do it, build content, leverage content, and I know there's value within it, because if you own the audience and you can build an audience, there's value in that. I do know that if you have your core 1,000, right, of followers and people and that love your business, it doesn't take millions. But if your core 1,000 that are really engaged with you in what you're doing, then you're going to be able to grow businesses and build things that you want to build because they're engaged with the things that you're doing and they want to be a part of it, right? So I think that's important. But I think what really kind of changed it for me is because I've gone through ebbs and flows of creating content and trying to do it. But I think the challenge, what kind of set me over is I had a friend tell me, you are robbing people. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I'm not robbing anyone. Yeah, I got concealed carry, but I'm not robbing anyone. And he was like, you're robbing people that you could be helping by not giving and putting out the knowledge that you've got. He's like, I don't care if you grow a big following or anything else. He's like, but just start putting the content out there because you are going to have an impact. And so, and I talked about it on a previous piece, like having an impact with your content is something that really drives me. That's kind of basically made it consistent, right? So he got to the, not only was I robbing people, I was being selfish and all these things I didn't realize I was being by not putting content out there. And so I think that's what helps me do that now. And I also understand that if we put good content out, we put really good value out for people that tune in, and we can impact their business and have a positive impact. Everything else, when you give, things in turn you'll eventually gain over time. So you can't always, the more you give, and I focus a lot on giving, right? One of my favorite books is The Go-Giver by Bob Burg, just because super simple book, super great story of just focusing on giving and not taking, because eventually the universe will bring that stuff back to you.
And what would you say to people like who don't have, because I feel like this holds back a lot of people from doing it, is they're like, I only have 800 followers. I only have 700 followers, because they look at those other big people that have the 100,000, the million, the 200,000. What would you say to those people to get started? Stop
comparing yourself to other people. I mean, my mom still comments on my stuff, so like
that's the number one supporter right there. You just need one.
Yeah, she's probably got a top engagement badge, So I think it's not worried about that. And I think what it is, it's you can't compare yourself to others because everybody started somewhere. And you just got to if you focus on the value that you're giving, the impact that you're trying to have, and putting content out that's going to outlast you, like one of my big things is creating experiences and memories for people, my family and friends that outlive me. And content's another way of doing that. And so I think it's, don't compare yourself to others, just do you. And you'll get there. When people are worried about only having so many followers, it's because they're looking at someone else going, oh, who wants to, or they lack confidence and say, they're looking at someone else that has a bunch of followers, go, well, that's where I need to be. Or they're going, who would really want to listen to me anyways, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and that plays a big role. I mean, another great example now going into this part right here is like Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast started, I think, was 2012, just doing Minecraft games, just going online. I mean, now Mr. Beast is probably one of the biggest content creators there is in the world, but he started from literally just doing Minecraft games. That's all. He didn't care if he had 5 followers, if he had 10 followers. He was just doing Minecraft games because he liked to record it. He started, then he grew, right? And everything takes time. People think you create one video and it's going to be a hit, right? Your first 10 videos might be shit. It might suck. Yeah. And it's honestly, but it's a consistency though. You'll get better as it goes on. You have to get mentors. You have to talk to people to teach you how to do these things in a better way. But you have to start. Like if you're not showing effort, if you're not starting, no mentor really is going to waste their time on you if you're not really putting into it. Because you've told me that before. It's like, why would someone like you, who's had the following, who's grown, who has the knowledge, waste their time on someone who doesn't really? They're not putting the effort to grow themselves or become better themselves. So I think that's one of the biggest things in creating content, guys, is being consistent. Just do it. Just get a camera. You don't need the nice equipment. You don't need the fancy microphones we have now or the fancy lights and stuff. You can do it all from your phone. I mean, Apple has done a great job giving you guys great cameras.
Yeah, and the live that we do mainly we go live with some cameras and stuff, but before I've done it with just my phone. You don't really need anything. The phone, matter of fact, I took my phone out of my pocket so it would ring.
Most powerful thing in the world.
Yeah. That's it's almost like a samurai sword that once you learn how to use it, right?
So I mean, that basically wraps it up for us. I mean, we hit all the points, guys. Guys, just make sure build this strong brand, right? And the ways you do that is telling a good story, be consistent, digital marketing strategies. Look at your data, and then make sure you're targeting your audience that you're going to solve a problem for. Don't go target everyone, because then that's going to be a waste of money. You might look really good in the numbers. Oh, look how many people click, but how many of those really convert? And then the last thing, content, guys. Go out there and do it. Don't hesitate. Don't wait for the nice camera. Don't wait to grow your following, because guess what? You probably won't grow your following unless you start doing it, or you go buy a bunch of people, which those don't even engage with you. So
yeah, so I'd say just do it.
There you go.
So,
Nike.
But reason being is I've been creating content for a long time. In regards to, I started creating content probably 2008 and 9, 10, around that area, like a little dabbling in everything else, but I haven't gotten consistent with it except for the last 2.5 years, right? So I wish I would have been consistent over time back then, because I know the impact you can have and where it can go if you stay consistent. That's the key. And so I'm happy that we finally kind of got in a process where we're leveraging it. We're moving forward. We're consistently putting out new stuff and ideally just trying to dish out value. But I could have been doing that for, at this point, 14, 15 years now, but I haven't. So don't come back 10 years, sit down 10 years from now and go, man, I wish I should have created some more content back then, because that's what I'm doing. And that's what you don't need to be doing, because you just need to just do it. And we'll go from there.
Exactly, guys. Hey, make sure to like, subscribe. Nate, where can they see this amazing content that you're putting out?
You say that, was that sarcasm?
No,
come on. Yeah, I would say, you can hit me up at Nate Kennedy MD and drop me notes, man. I am in the DMs over there. Excited to hear kind of what value you got or what you learned, or hell, man, even if you're one of them people who love to critique, send it on in.
Exactly. Ask questions, guys. I mean, you never know. You might answer it in the live, but see you guys for the next time.